Good afternoon, and welcome to the very first, if you look on your program, it says right on the front, the inaugural performance of the Inner City Youth Orchestra. Well, thank you, of the Inner City Youth Orchestra of New York. I am Charles Dickerson, and I am one of the co-founders of this organization. Brand new organization. I'm going to give you a little bit of the history in just a moment, but we are delighted to be here at St. Philip's this afternoon, our home, and this church and its congregation and its pastor, Reverend Dr. Rector, Father Darrell Tiller, who has been so warm and gracious and inviting to us. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this very first performance. And we're just blessed to be here in this church. The piece that you just heard was, some of you I hope recognized it as Lift Every Voice and Sing. I'm kind of surprised some of you didn't stand. Okay, well, all right. So that is a piece that was written by, it actually was a poem that was written by, why am I drawing a blank in my mind today? By Johnson. James Weldon Johnson, thank you. James Weldon Johnson, and set to music by his brother, and it was adopted in in the 1920s, I believe it was, by the National Association of Colored People, NAACP, as the official national anthem for African Americans. Some of you might not know that during those times, African Americans really were not invited to sing the United States national anthem. As a matter of fact, the real United States national anthem, which we know as the Star-Spangled Banner, really was not adopted by Congress until the 1930s. Prior to that, we had a national anthem, kind of. It was America the Beautiful. Everybody sang that and used it kind of as the national anthem, but it was never officially adopted. But we were not encouraged to participate in the singing of that song. So James Weldon Johnson wrote this poem. It was first performed in 1900 at a celebration for the birthday of Abraham Lincoln in Florida. So that was that initial piece. Today we are here as a string ensemble. As you can see, every single instrument that is in our ensemble today is a string instrument. And we'll talk just a few minutes about that, just to let you know. We intend to be, today's our first time to perform, we intend to be a full orchestral ensemble. What do I mean by that? Well, a full orchestral ensemble is generally made up of 4 instruments of music, if you don't know this. Some of you are very well versed in stuff like this, but some of us don't know it. The 4 families of instruments that comprise An orchestra are primarily strings, which you see today, woodwinds. Some of you know woodwinds. You're going to hear a woodwind, one woodwind later on today, but woodwinds are oboes and flutes and clarinets and bassoons. Saxophones are part of the woodwind family, but they usually are not in an orchestra. And then we have brasses in an orchestra, trumpets, trombones, tubas. And we have percussion instruments, timpani drums, snare drums, field drums, chimes, crash cymbals, all kinds of cymbals. And we have some drums over here somewhere. So yeah, we have some drums over here in the drum family. We're not going to use those today. All we are presenting today is the beginnings of our orchestra. It is a string ensemble. Now, why are we doing it this way? Because most orchestras are about 70 to 75% strings. So we need to start with string orchestras. And since this is our first time, we're starting to develop the string section of our orchestra, and here we are. So I'm going to be giving more and more information to you during the time of our time together here today, but we're not going to be here real long because I see some of you fanning, and gosh, I wish I could borrow a fan. So we're not going to stay all night. We're not going to stay all day. But I will be sharing more information with you as we proceed. The second piece, I hope most of you have received a program for today. The second piece that we're going to play for you now is a piece written by George Frederick Handel. Many people know of George Frederick Handel because he is the composer of one of the best known pieces that's ever been presented in a church called The Messiah. And from The Messiah comes this piece that everybody knows, the Hallelujah chorus. Everybody sings, Hallelujah. Yeah, everybody knows that. That's written by George Frederick Handel. This piece that we're about to present for you now is called Hornpipe. And it is from a series of music that he wrote for King George of England. And it was, King George was having a celebration. Like you were having a street party today, he had a party out on the water. And he asked Handel, would you write some music just for this celebration? And Handel came up with what we now call today the water music. And what we're going to play for you now is called Hornpipe from the water music. You might recognize this tune. In fact, I hope today you'll recognize many of the pieces that we're going to play. But here's Hornpipe from Handel's water music. Hope you enjoy this. So I'd like to see the hands of those of you who have heard that piece of music before. Good. But I bet you've never heard it played that good before. Well, I'd like to think that's the truth. And I'm going to believe it. So, we began this orchestra on April 4 of this year. That is less than 4 months ago. Yeah, we'll take that. And I'm kind of proud that here we are less than 4 months from the very beginning. We had our very first rehearsal on Friday, April 4. And I'm really kind of proud that here we are less than 4 months and we're playing music at this level. I'm really proud of these young people. Yes, that's right. So I'm going to spend just a minute and tell you just a little bit about myself. I am a longtime orchestra conductor. I'm in my 7th decade of life. I'm 72 years old. And I thank God for every minute that I get. And my parents started me on piano lessons when I was 3 years old. I was born in Philadelphia. And I went to a school in Philadelphia that was run by the Quakers for young people in the inner city who were wanting to learn music. And my parents sent me to that school. And I had piano when I was 3. Let that be a life lesson for some of you who are in the audience. You want your children to learn how to play music? Start them on the piano when they're 3. I happen to believe, now, I'm from Los Angeles. I've lived most of my life there. And so you'll forgive me if I talk about LeBron James for half a second. But I happen to believe that LeBron James must have had a basketball in his hands when he was 3 years old, dribbling it and learning how to cross over and everything else. And it's because he had that skill at that young age that he was able to become what he has become today, an icon in the basketball world, in the sports world, in all of our society. If we do the same thing for our young people, give them something in their hands, like a piano. Hold that thing up, sir. What is that? Like a violin, like a cello. When they're 3 years old, start them young. And as they grow on in life, they will, who knows, maybe they may even at some point get to stand in front of an orchestra like this and conduct it. So I really want to encourage all of you to do this. I just said a moment ago, I grew up I was born in Philadelphia, but I grew up in Los Angeles, and I live there even now. I have the privilege of being the founder and the director of the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles. The way this orchestra started is Aaron Stokes. Stand up, Aaron. You might be able to tell there's some people over here who love him. So Aaron was born and raised right here in Bed-Stuy. There's an old story in the Bible. Somebody else asked, could anything good come out of Nazareth? Y'all know that story? Some of y'all don't go to church. Okay. Well, this church is open on Sundays. It'll be open tomorrow. What time do you got service? 9:30. Thank you, Pastor. Well, when you say, could something good come out of Nazareth, we oftentimes wondered if something good could come out of Bed-Stuy. And look at what we got. So a couple of years ago, Aaron came out to Los Angeles, and he hooked up with us in L.A. We had a little orchestra going on out there, and he played with us for a while. And then he decided he needed to come back home for reasons that were very honorable and good. He came back, and just before he left, he sat down with me in my office and said, hey, Chuck, we don't have anything like this in Brooklyn, in New York. Could we do something like this? And by this, I specifically mean an orchestra that is, frankly, catering to a community of color. There are lots of orchestras around New York, good orchestras, great orchestras, but none that particularly are catering to the young people of the African American and the brown community and communities of color. So he asked me, would I be willing to come out and help him get something started? So at the very beginning, I said, I'm the co-founder. Aaron is the other co-founder, and we are together trying to assemble. So please keep this in mind. As you know of young people who ought to be a part of this ensemble, please be in touch with us. We have a website. You can find us, Inner City Youth Orchestra, New York. If you have a program, it's on the front of it. We're going to do some more music now. Johann Sebastian Bach. How many of you have ever heard of him? Okay, all right. Now, this is an Episcopal church. Bach spent most of his life working in a Lutheran church, kind of close, but not quite. Didn't quite live up to the Episcopalians. He was an organist, and he was also a composer. A lot of his music was church-related, because in those days, he was born in 1650, in 1675. Yeah, something like that, because he died in 1750. Okay, most of his life, he worked primarily as a church musician, meaning he was writing hymns, he was writing cantatas, preparing music for the church. Well, occasionally he would write something that is not so much for the church, but rather for just an orchestra, and he wrote a couple of orchestral suites. We are now going to play for you the second movement, known as the Adagio movement, kind of slow and peaceful and gentle, from his third orchestral suite. I think you're going to recognize some of this music too. Here is the Adagio from the third orchestral suite by Bach. Edvard Grieg is not like Bach. Bach was born and lived all of his life in Germany. We talked about Handel before. Handel was born in Germany but spent most of his life in England, working for the Queen of England, actually, writing operas and stuff. And I've already told you about Bach. He wrote a lot of church music. That really was the focus of what he did. But now we're going to turn to a piece by Edvard Grieg. Grieg is from the Scandinavian countries. Denmark? Norway? Which one? Norway. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Norwegian man. And he wrote a suite of pieces called the Holberg, Holberg. The Holberg Suite. It is comprised of 5 different movements. We're only going to play the first movement for you. It is an exciting piece of music, and it kind of reminds me at the very beginning of horses running. It goes, so listen for that, and then you'll hear, emerging out of all of that chaos, the violins just so beautifully have this little melody on top of it. And then it all comes to a big crashing end in just great form. I hope you'll enjoy this. This is the prelude. In the program it says preludium. That's a word for prelude, or the first movement of the Holberg Suite by Edvard Grieg. Now here comes a piece that I think everybody in this room shall have heard. If you've ever been to a wedding, more than likely you've heard this. This is a piece that is commonly played at weddings. This is the Canon in D by Johann Pachelbel. Pachelbel lived in the 1600s. But this piece has survived, and if you leave this sanctuary today and go to a wedding tonight, you might very well hear this piece played. Hope you enjoy. Here is Pachelbel's Canon in D. Well, we've talked a little bit about Handel, we've talked a little bit about Bach, we've talked a little bit about Grieg. There's another guy who, unfortunately, too many men are focused on with regard to composition. There are a lot of women composers as well who also need to be acknowledged. And as we proceed with our orchestra, we will be playing music of female composers. But today, yeah. And we're actually going to play one piece in just a few minutes of a piece of music composed by a composer of color. So, but for now, we're going to talk about another guy who you may have heard of. Mozart? Yeah, okay. So Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart lived in the last part of the 17th century. He was really prominently known as a composer of classical music. He really was an expert in this stuff. He kind of helped to develop it and make it so that it lives even to this day. And now we're going to play for you a piece of music written by Mozart. And this is a piece that, you know, just like a few minutes ago, I was giving you the example of the Hallelujah Chorus. Everybody knows that. Well, not too many people know the name Eine kleine Nachtmusik. It stands for a little night music. That's what it is. That's German for a little night music, written by Mozart. But even though you've never perhaps even heard those words or never knew what it stood for, you've heard this music. Just wait till you hear about the first 9 notes, okay? And here's the real special feature that we're presenting to you today. We've been welcomed into this church and call it our home now by Father Darrell Tiller, who is a priest in the Episcopal Church, who taught school for many, many years, but he also has another ability, another skill that he's going to show for you right now. Father Tiller actually has a degree in orchestral conducting. And he's the pastor of this church. So, you know, those of you who live in it, that's right. So those of you who live in this community, I know you're going to be here on Sunday because he's going to be doing music as well as preaching. And in addition to that, you're going to take the word not just in this community, but far and wide, and let everybody come and know Father Tiller. Please welcome him to the podium as he conducts the first movement of Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik. the conducting preacher. Come on, stand up, man. Well, you might remember earlier I shared with you about the four families of instruments that are in the orchestra. The string section, which you're seeing here today, violins, violas, cellos, and basses. And I told you a little bit about woodwinds and their clarinets and oboes and bassoons and something else, flutes. And there's brasses and there's percussion. And I told you that we're really presenting to you, with one exception today, the string section, portion of the string section of the orchestra. We are now going to play for you a piece that features another part of the orchestra, the clarinet. This is a piece written by Mozart again. It is the second movement, his adagio movement, from his clarinet concerto. What's a concerto? Well, a concerto is essentially a symphonic piece of music, meaning a piece of music written for an orchestra generally, or some kind of an instrumental ensemble, usually. That's what a symphony is. And then you take it and you take one instrument out and you make that instrument a soloist. That's a concerto. You can have a piano concerto, there's many of them. A violin concerto, you can take one violin out and have that violin be featured as the soloist. That's a violin concerto. So Mozart wrote this particular concerto for clarinet. And we have with us today Richard Adger, who's a native of Kansas City, who has since relocated here to New York to try to bring you folks some culture. He's going to be playing the clarinet for us. He's going to play the Adagio movement from the clarinet concerto by Mozart. This is a beautiful piece of music, very quiet and slow. Hope you enjoy this. Please welcome Richard. Where are you? Here. Mr. Richard Adger. So, I told you that we would play one piece by a composer of color. This is a piece by Joseph Boulogne, known by some people as the Black Mozart. Some people would argue that he borrowed from Mozart and stole from him, learned his technique from him. Others might argue that Mozart stole from him and learned technique from him. We don't really know the answer to that because both of those guys were pretty good composers. This will be the Allegro. Allegro generally means kind of an upbeat, fast movement. This is an Allegro from Boulogne's Symphony No. 1 in G major. And kind of light, kind of delicate. Hope you'll enjoy it. Well, dear folks, this brings us to the end of our concert for the day. We have one more piece we're going to play for you. I'll introduce it to you in just a second, but there are a couple of people I really do want to point out to you today. We've had two parents who've really just been with us the entire time. They always show up. They're at every single rehearsal. They're taking names in a good way. And they're making sure that everybody is enrolled in where they're supposed to be. Miss Tasha, would you please stand up? This is one of our mothers. And Miss Nicole, would you please stand up? Thank you. We couldn't do what we do but for you. So thank you so very much. I shared with you earlier that I have the privilege of conducting the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles. I am the conductor of that orchestra, but we also have an associate conductor, and his name is Darrell, and he actually is here in New York right now at the League of American Orchestras. What's the name of what is it, Doug? The Essentials program. And Dwayne is an enrollee in the Essentials. He's learning what it's like to run an orchestra. No easy thing. And I'm not just talking about standing up here on the podium conducting, but, making sure that people show up. Making sure that if you sell tickets get sold. And a bunch of administrative things. And also being the face of the organization in the community. So Dwayne is actually at Juilliard right now this week. Are we okay? Okay. He's at Juilliard right now doing this, taking this workshop, and he's actually here today, came to enjoy our concert. So Dwayne, would you please stand up and wave your hand? This is Dwayne Darrell. The last thing I need to share with you before I tell you about the last piece is we cannot do what we do without support. Say it again, lady. That's right. That's all right. All right. Now, what do I mean by support? Yeah, it's good for you to bring your children to come to the concerts and all that kind of stuff. But very frankly, it costs money for us to operate this organization. And we have just very recently started to get our 501c3. Which means anything that you contribute will be tax deductible for you. So, I hate to say this, but we don't have it quite yet. It's coming. It's on its way. So, if you would like to contribute and help us support this organization, you can make out a check. And for now, you can just put on there ICYO, Inner City Youth Orchestra. And we will take care of it. We will see to it that it is put into an appropriate account so that you get a tax deduction for your contribution. And we take contributions up to $1 million. So if any of you would like to contribute $1 million today, we will be happy to receive it. And if it's a little less, we'll still be happily receiving it. Yes, Pastor. Yes, we do. We do have a website, the ICYONY, Inner City Youth Orchestra, New York. And thank you, Pastor. There will be a couple of baskets in the back. Some of you know what it's like to go to church and have a basket in the back. If you don't, please become acquainted with it today. We want to thank the congregation once again here at St. Philip's and Father Tiller for opening this congregation, this beautiful church. I want to share with you one thing. I was told, I didn't know this until we started having rehearsals here, that this is a church that was attended by two very important African-American people in our country's history. One is Jackie Robinson, and the other is Vernon Jordan. And if you look and see this stained glass window in the back, they've got a lot of people in there. And if you look on this side of the window, the second one down, he's got a baseball cap on. That's in memory of Jackie Robinson. And he's one of my personal heroes, so I like to come to church and celebrate Jackie. So we're just delighted to be here. Thank you to St. Philip's. Anything else I need to say before we go? Okay, so we're going to play our last piece for you today. This is, I need to tell you that Wolfgang Mozart wrote 41 symphonies. How many? You can remember that easily because Jackie Robinson wore number 42. Okay, so anytime you think about, Jackie, just think about Mozart. Jackie is 42. Mozart did 41. That's pretty good. He was trying to do number 42, I'm sure. In any event, of his 42, we kind of divide them into certain areas of his life: early Mozart, middle Mozart, late Mozart. This is a finale from his symphony number 15, which is right just about at the end of his early period, moving into his middle period of composition. This goes pretty fast. It is the finale to Symphony number 15. Thank you again for coming today. We hope you enjoy this. Aaron tells me to share with you that we would be overjoyed if you would follow us on our social media page. Instagram, that's it. ICYONY. So follow us, would you please? Thanks so much.